#1 hockey podcast, the Cats and Bolts. 3, 2, 1.
All right, thank you, producer Ben Castro. Wonderful job, and you are the best circus barker in the business. And it's a very special episode. Serena's going to love it because I don't have my cowbell out.
I love that. That's my favorite part
I knew
about
that you
this.
would, but we have a very special guest here today. Stanley Cup champion Jeff Chychrun, Bally Sports, Florida. There you go. Hey, a hand from everybody. Bally Sports, Florida alum, NHL veteran of, I was going to write it down, Flyers, Oilers, Kings.
Yeah, Little Penguins.
Little Penguins, is that everybody?
Yeah. Who are we missing? Whalers, Flyers, Penguins.
Penguins. That was a lot of
Kings,
games. You said Bally Sports was
games.
the Panthers was the longest team you've ever been with.
Yeah, 5 years. I was Flyer property for 7 years, but I only played there for 3. But yeah, it was a 5-year run here.
We got a great run, capping off with a Stanley Cup title, which, by the way, we're brought to you in part by Beach House Pompano and Boresco. Our guest appearances are brought to you by them. And my number one point is your Stanley Cup ring. And Ben has it, so people know what we're talking about here. Throw it up, Benny boy. This was, I believe it was December 19th. You staff. I might be wrong. You tell me if I am or not, but we're pulled together and awarded these rings from the 2024 Stanley Cup Championship of the Florida Panthers. And have you taken it off, or did you wear it just for us? Or
I actually brought it to Washington the next day and wore it in the family room, the Capitals. So I just can't believe just the gesture by the Viola family, the Panthers organization. I mean, I think they gave up with the 300 employees and another 150 for inaugural season ticket holders got rings as well. I just think, I mean, you want to start a business program and you want to develop a culture. You talk about it in the locker room, and I was in that room enough last year to sort of see in the prior years to see what they're building in there, and it's impressive enough. Who wouldn't want to go to work for this, man? I know during COVID, I think there were 3 organizations in the National Hockey League that nobody lost a paycheck, and the Florida Panthers were one of them. We like to give it to the southern teams north of the border, don't we? The media and everybody. Hockey doesn't belong
I stay away
in the
from
South.
it, but
it's so
you
true.
guys do.
It's so true. And it's loved in the South. And you got to take your hat off to those people. I believe Mr. Vinnick in Tampa was one of the other owners. I'm not sure who the other club was, but I think that's a good scoop.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody lost a paycheck.
She knew that.
So.
Tampa actually laid off their staff.
They did.
Yeah, they laid off some of their staff because
I'm disappointed. My information
it
is
was
wrong.
well, it was kind of around that situation where all of a sudden they're like, Gary Bettman's like, okay, if you guys can have fans, you can have fans, but you got to put up this big glass and whatever. So all of a sudden Tampa was scrambling. That's why they didn't have fans at their games, and Florida did, because they didn't have the staff to accommodate getting people tickets.
I didn't realize that.
And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, and also the glass behind the players' bench has to be 95 feet tall, and everybody has to sit at least 18 rows behind the players. So yeah, that was kind of what happened at that time. But I think what you said about Vinny Viola, I think if Vinny Viola is not the owner, none of this happens.
No, I agree. I remember the night COVID was about to hit. They retired. I was broadcasting and retired Roberto Luongo's jersey number, the rafters. And I remember him looking at Roberto and saying, "Roberto, we're gonna win here with you, right? Like this. We're gonna build a championship roster here." And so much happened. League shut down a week later. So much went on, the evolution of the game and coming out of it on the other side. And he's been a man of his word, committed to the fans, to the hockey club, giving everybody the best chance to win. And I'm telling you, I think he's just been a great model owner for the league and growing the game.
Well, since we're on the topic, I was going to call this the presidential episode. We're going to call it Jeff Chychrun Joins. But on Monday, Monday, the Panthers visited the White House and were honored. Did you watch any of the clips?
Hard not to watch any of the clips.
So you just see Trump say, "My good friend Vincent Viola, my good friend," and Vinny sitting. Are they really?
Right.
What did you think of the whole thing?
Listen,
not that. What did you think of the ceremony?
Politics aside, I think it's such an honor to go to the White House or maybe go visit the Prime Minister of Canada if you get the opportunity to be, to earn that right and see how your country has developed and see where the epicenter of your country, how it's governed. And I mean, I think that's more than anything the most important part and get a thrill. I'm sure the guys got a kick out of Mr. Trump. And I'm sure they'll have some great stories about some of the things he might have said. But I don't know. I don't know if Vinny's a friend of his or not. They all wore red ties, though.
Yeah. Exactly. You got anything? Because I
Nope.
can keep rolling. Oh, this is going to be.
Keep
Might as well keep rolling. The Capitals the very next day beat the Panthers 6-3. And that was Tuesday night, I guess.
Last night.
Yeah, in a game that, let's just say, Jacob Chychrun, your son, led all defensemen 20 minutes and 5 seconds. You probably are aware. Stat line 0-0-0 for Jacob, 2 penalty minutes. But it was a closer game than 6-3.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was, not a whole lot going on. Special teams. I think the two clubs. I honestly think the Panthers are the benchmark. I think the Capitals had to come in and play a very similar style. I think if you heard Spencer Carberry's pregame comments, it was, we have to really manage pucks well. We can't give them opportunities to go on the power play and really hurt us. I think both teams had a couple power plays. PKs were pretty large. I do think we get one shorthanded goal? Was Tommy Wilson's goal the shorthanded?
I think it was.
I should know, right? I should have been more prepared today. But, I think these two teams are very they're both – Washington's a very big club, and you've got some surprises with Protas. We got a bunch of new defensemen sort of come in. The goaltending has been outstanding, not unlike what the Florida Panthers have been the past 3 years. So I think it was a couple of clubs that I think the Panthers know who they are. Washington's done really well this year to play how they have and win those tight games and find scoring when they really need it. They got that last night. I think both teams. One thing I've been impressed with the Capitals since my son's gotten there is a lot of those 50-50 pucks. In Arizona, Ottawa, there were a lot of those pucks we didn't come up with. And if you got strung out in your own zone for an extended period of time, the puck always seemed to go on the back of the net. It's not that way here. They got 4 lines that can play, seem to have 6 defense can play, and the goaltenders are great. And that to me, that just rings the Florida Panthers. That's what they are. And I think probably a matchup. Is that the word I'm looking for? Game for the Washington Capitals, a benchmark to see how they match up against a champion club.
And they liked it.
I think so. Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, listen, regular season is different, but they battled hard and earned the 2 points.
I think what's interesting about Washington this year is how well they're playing. I don't think anybody expected that, but they've got this mix of seasoned vets that have been around for a long time and then brand new guys, and it's clicking. We don't see that too often.
Right, and how fortunate. I know I left the Stanley Cup parade, flew to Ottawa, and on my way to Ottawa on July 1st, I believe it was, I got the call from my son that he'd been traded. And pretty exciting, and then thinking of the Washington Capitals, I know working their games last year, and in talking to the former GM Brian McClelland, and they were sort of Pittsburgh a year ago. They were aging, they weren't fast, they were very loyal to their veteran guys, and they knew they had to evolve. But they wanted to give Alex Ovechkin a chance to chase Gretzky's record, so they brought in 7-8 guys to start the season. Matt Roy, my son. They brought in Pierre-Luc Dubois, Logan Thompson, Brandon Duhaime of Parkland, Florida, Coral Springs, Taylor Radish, Andrew Mangiapane. These guys have all produced.
Did you mention Logan Thompson?
I got Logan Thompson.
Yeah,
how could I not? He's been spectacular.
Yeah.
Charlie Lindgren's been great too. A little less lucky than Logan, but every night they give their team a chance to win. So they've been fun to watch. And to your point, Sarina, everybody they brought in has contributed. Not unlike the work Bill Zito has done here the 5 years he's been here. I mean, you can go down the list. Forsling, Bennett, even Anthony Duclair when he was here, guys like that, Josh Mahur, Ekman Larson. These guys have all produced when they've come into town and given their team a chance to win. And we've been lucky. I mean, I didn't know what to expect going to D.C. other than it was another opportunity for my son.
When you throw out names like Josh Mahura and those guys, you almost forget, because the one thing that Bill Zito didn't do was screw around. If this wasn't happening, we got to make it happen.
Yeah.
He didn't sit on guys for too long. And it wasn't that long ago that those guys were here, but now I feel like the Panthers are gelling. They've been gelling, I
agree. It's and hard. So we talk about Josh Mahura. People forget last year he was odd man out a lot of nights. Year before their final run, he played all 82 in every playoff game. Brought in Oliver Ekman Larson, Brandon Montour. How do you replace those guys and just keep on trucking? That's the salary cap world, right? So you bring in Nate Schmidt. You have Uvis Belinskis, and it takes a little while to replace. Those are great players. Oliver
Boquist. Mind you, they moved him up
right.
front. Yeah, but.
So it's a transition, right? You only have $85 million to play with, and you're a cap team. You got to get guys coming in on good deals, and they have to be able to contribute. Not an easy formula for anybody to mix in.
I'm dying to talk about this. You saw he referred to the Capitals as we. Did you notice?
Did
I'm
I?
dying to
that.
get your take, but probably more hers, on Alex Ovechkin being 17 goals away from beating Wayne Gretzky's record. He got another empty netter. Canada's raging that he's going to beat Wayne Gretzky's record with all these empty netters. And I don't know if you know the numbers. He's already got way more. I think he's at, my numbers are a little off.
Empty
but I think,
net?
Yeah, empty netters. 63
last night.
for Ovi and like 51 for Wayne. It's way more empty net goals. And he's going to beat Wayne based on that. How do you feel?
Yeah, that's an. I played with Wayne as well, right? I do know what I know of Wayne Gretzky, though. His father told him when he was passing Gordy that Gordy will be the first one there to congratulate you, right? And records are made to be broken. Obviously, our generation, we never thought anybody beat Wayne in anything, right? Because so for a number of reasons, Alex has been able to catch him, and I tend to think he's probably, whether he gets it this year or early next season, he's probably going to pass Wayne. Wayne's going to be gracious as the day is long that he did it, and he'll be at the rink. And but I tell you, Ovi's been, our time with him, I didn't know what to expect. He's been the most gracious, accommodating. My son has just fallen in love with this guy as a teammate. I didn't realize just how happy he is for his teammates when they score and he's not on the scoreboard. I really believe it's all about wins and losses for this guy, because everything that I've seen and in talking to their media and staff, when someone scores, he's screaming the loudest on the bench. It's really been fun to watch. So it's a tough record to beat, right? I mean, Wayne's a mountain of a man, and different eras, obviously, but I'm pulling for him. I hope he does it. I hope he does it soon. I'm gonna have some mixed emotions because I'm such a Wayne Gretzky guy, but I have to tell you, my time with Alex has been nothing short of great.
They've both been class.
Yeah,
well,
they have.
And if I may, before we turn it over to her, and I can't wait to hear what she has to say. I don't care. People were Googling and sending in the numbers of the empty netters. I don't care because they all count.
They do.
Period.
They do.
But she might not agree as the biggest Wayne Gretzky person I know.
Well, obviously, I'm such a hockey purist, and I go off about this stuff all the time. But I will say this. It's a difference of like 10 goals. I mean, what they're doing right now, they're putting Ovi out there. They're giving him the chintzy opportunities to score an empty net goal with 1 second left in a 5-3 game. He's getting the chintzy opportunities now. But in the course of 800 goals, the difference between empty net and not is like going to be 12, 15 goals. I don't know. It's, to me, the empty net thing is a moot point. It's like Wayne had the opportunity. Ovi's not going to be the greatest player of all time. Wayne Gretzky will always be the greatest hockey player of all time. So I'm coming to terms with what's about to happen, but it doesn't mean Ovi's a better player. If he gets the goals, he earned it. You know, when you talk about him being a gracious, listen, Alexander Ovechkin is the first and only Russian player I've ever actually really liked. I like Pavel Bure, but Ovi, you can't help but like that guy. He's the first, I think, Russian that's a team player in an American environment. It doesn't happen like that with the Russians very often. And he's just been their guy. He's been a franchise guy. How can you not like that?
Yeah, I well said. They're categorically different, aren't they? Like he's going to be the greatest goal scorer of all time, probably. And you know what? He's missed a lot of hockey with work stoppages too. So if you take a couple of maybe his prime years, they missed the one full season. How old was he? 28, 29 maybe. maybe he would have passed it already, and there would have been a lot of goals in the back of the net with a goaltender in there. So I don't know how many Wayne missed as a result of work stoppages. It certainly wouldn't be as many as Alex, I don't think. But yeah, he's going to be known as the greatest goal scorer of all time. Or maybe it'll be 1A, and 1A. But he's gone about his business very well, and just being himself.
The footnote on all of this, as somebody pointed out to me today, Gretzky's 50 goals in 39 games, the 50th was into an empty net.
100%.
Dunk, dunk, dunk.
Granted,
Against the Flyers, I think, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, picture Billy Barber fishing
Yeah.
for it.
He also got 3 goals that game, or 4 goals or something that game. So, I mean,
Just passing it along.
I completely agree with that. I don't care about the empty net thing.
The greatest race right now for the Stanley Cup playoffs is in the East, and the Tampa Bay Lightning beat Ottawa 4-3 Tuesday night, which was key for the standings, but it's just one night. Who's going to get in? Lightning, Sens, neither, Detroit?
Maybe both.
Maybe both?
What's
Yeah,
Detroit? 15-4-1 with Todd McLellan.
Unbelievable.
I apologize. I haven't been as
Don't
sharp
worry.
on my standings
We're
since
okay.
I'm not working, but I heard this coming in as an NHL network, and they've been on fire. So they've been the best record in hockey since McLellan took over.
Wow.
Doing his magic there. I don't know. I mean, there's still lots of hockey to be played. I imagine health and maybe the odd tweak come the trade deadline will factor in on all this. But there's a number of candidates for those, probably for that 8, 9, 10 spot. There's a number of candidates.
What's interesting, Detroit this year beats the big teams. They will go in and they'll win the games they have to. It's like Tampa, sometimes they get a win, sometimes they get a shocking loss. Ottawa, same thing. You never know what you're going to get. But man, sometimes Detroit just brings it.
Well, Stevie from Nepean, Ontario.
Yzerman?
Right? Yes.
Yzerman?
Yeah, a year older than me. Yep. He built Tampa, right, to be a championship club long term, and that's what he's trying to do in Detroit. So not surprising that they're sort of trying to get over that hump, and they're beating good clubs because that's probably how they're built to be. They got good leadership in Larkin. They got the big kid Sider on the back end, some other guys that I think their goaltending's been pretty strong since McLellan took over. So yeah, I think they're built probably to win in the long term.
We do a show with the South Florida Tribune, or I should say I do, and Scott Morganroth is the publisher. He's from Detroit, and we bring in George Eichhorn, former producer at WXYZ, and they're raging in Detroit, by the way. If they miss the playoffs, they might burn the rink down. And I said, what are you guys so mad about? And they said, we're sick of losing. I'm like, you've had 4 Stanley Cups the last 30 years.
Right.
That's a rabid fan base.
Yeah, it was a pretty good 20-year run, wasn't it? But they didn't win till Yzerman was 32, I think. Stevie broke in at 18. Am I right? It's about that. Takes time sometimes, right? And you got to have the right mix. Yeah, actually, there was an article today I saw in one of the Mr. Ilitch, Mike Ilitch's son's getting divorced. They were sort of talking about
Money?
Yeah, how will that affect his stake with the Red Wings and the Tigers? So I have no idea. It was a
And
bit of
pizza.
a headline today. And pizza. They make lots of money in pizza.
Some people
probably
have
the number
too
one.
much money.
Oh,
man.
boy. The next item that I got a lot of good stuff here. 4 Nations Face-Off drops the puck next week. I don't know. They say there's not a lot of hype. You see the commercials ad nauseum, man. They're pumping the hell out of it.
Yeah.
I'll be watching. She'll be watching. What do you think?
I think there's going to be a lot of viewers. I mean, now listen, it could all depend. If it's a Sweden-Finland final, then maybe by the end of the week, some people lose a little bit of interest. But I think as long as Canada and the U.S. are involved in this country, it'll certainly be in the forefront. Fortunately, it's after the Super Bowl, right? So it's kind of in a little bit of a quiet zone. But no, I think it's like regionally in this country, I've heard a lot of people they're critical of those outdoor games. To me, those outdoor games have been nothing but fantastic, particularly regionally. That the Kings played, was it Anaheim at Dodgers Stadium? You see the different, listen, Boston, Chicago, Rangers, Flyers, these teams always seem to be in. We'll never forget Edmonton and Montreal kicking it off, right?
Freezing.
That year. I think regionally they've been great for every market. So I think a lot of these teams, I think maybe in this country, depending on who's playing from those local markets, that may help enhance wherever they are, sort of the viewership. Obviously here, teams are going to be watching Barkey playing for Finland, Team USA, obviously Matthew. You got Forsling playing for Sweden. Who's playing for Canada?
Sams.
You got both the Sams, yep. So I think there's going to be a lot of interest, particularly in the Florida market.
I think it's fantastic. And you know what? Since you're here, you brought up the outdoor games. We won't ask Sarina's opinion on that. Yeah. You can imagine she's like most from the north, not fans of it. Yeah. But I am.
I've evolved a lot.
You ever think there'd be a day?
I never thought of it before, probably, right? I mean, obviously you can control climates. If we can play them inside Emerald Bank Arena, is that what it's called? We can certainly play it inside a baseball rink, I would imagine. We're going to find out, though, now, aren't we? So, but I think it's going to be exciting. I think a different venue. I mean, I love going to Marlins games. A lot of times I'm the only one in there with Craig Minervini or Jess Blaylock because there's only about 20 fans in there anyway. A lot of those nights.
That's a fact.
But I love going down there. It's the site of the old Orange Bowl, but it's a very, I mean, I think it's a 35,000 seat baseball stadium, so it's pretty intimate. I think it'll reflect well on the hockey side.
I think it'll be great.
Hope so.
I can't wait to go. They say the baseball format isn't as good as football stadiums. Do you know anything about that? And for vantage points?
Oh, baseball stadium's not as good.
Not as good as football.
Probably. I think baseball. The Blue Jays used to play right at
P&E
Exhibition Stadium, whatever they called it. That's right. And they had the football. So it was sort of the left field wall, and they had the north side sort of. That was the football stadium, and then the baseball stadium. They built it after, right? Sort of circled around the end. But that doesn't really reflect hockey. But I could see where football would be better, particularly in Canada, because generally they're two-sided stadiums, like Lansdowne Park in Ottawa. So you got the length where lots of fans, and I guess they could bring in bleachers. But
the next one, Gary Bettman announced he's retiring in 2 years.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
That was last week. And I wondered what you would say his legacy is.
For me personally, I raised a hockey player in Florida. I played in LA when he came in. To me, it's the growth of the game in the southern, not even southern United States, all over the United States, really. I think he's done a tremendous job. And I see the passion all over the country. I go to rinks from Phoenix to San Jose, California, to New York, to, down here. Tennessee, we do our USA Hockey regional camps to send kids to the U.S. development team. We do those last 3 years. We've done them in Charlotte and Nashville, and the place is packed. Julian Brisebois, 2 boys are there, the GM of Tampa. So I think to me, the growth of the game, obviously the revenues, I mean, the cap, he announced last week, it's going up markedly in the next 2 years, right? So this year it's going to go from 85 to 95 and then 102 and then 113 or something the next 3 years. So knock on wood, not a bad time for someone's son to be an unrestricted free agent, hopefully.
Yeah.
I don't want to jinx myself, but
no, you didn't.
But the growth of the game, how can you argue it, right? I mean, Gretz went to LA, and from that point on, we've had 12 more teams added.
You can't argue it, but Sarina will.
Yeah.
She's not a Bettman fan, so
I'm not, and I do adamantly believe this is a business. The National Hockey League is a business, but I also feel, because of course I was a diehard Gretzky fan, so him going to LA was a sore spot for me in the first place, but I also feel like having so many teams in the league, the talent is diluted. Yes, it gives players an opportunity to play in the league, but from a fan standpoint, that's where I'm at with that.
There's no doubt there's a lot of teams. There's also way more players around the world playing than there was 40 years ago too, and I think that plays into it. 30 years ago, we didn't have players coming out of California, Texas, and Florida. Now we have first-round picks coming out of California, Texas, and Florida, and I think that plays in the equation, and there's a lot of that growth. I hear those comments all the time, Sarina, and I've got a great big maple leaf on my chest, but I've evolved a lot in the last 30 years, and I go home, and to me, it's a bit of a Canadian thing not liking Gary Bettman, because I hear it all the time. I argue with people in Ottawa all the time. In my family, they can't stand Gary Bettman. I look at them, why? You got a team in Ottawa when no owners had the money for it. They kept a team in Ottawa when, was it Firestone, or who's the guy?
Roy Firestone?
Filed for Chapter 11. I think he was the second owner. Brought in Eugene Melnick. Kept the team there. You've had the All-Star game. You've had the draft. What beef do you have with Gary Bettman? Other than he's not from Winnipeg, Montreal,
And no
or Toronto.
teams won the Stanley Cup since '93 when
And
he
they
got the
throw
job.
that one at me. People from Toronto throw that one at me all the time. And I'm like, you don't think Toronto Maple Leafs get any concessions from the National Hockey League?
The
Please.
mecca of the earth.
To me, it's such a weak argument that Gary's the commissioner. Yeah. Now, if you want to throw out the argument that, yeah, players want to come play in tax benefiting states as free agents, I'll take that one. But free agents want to go to Toronto. Free agents may not want to go to some of the cold weather places, but Toronto, I think Montreal is still a draw. I mean, it's such a vibrant place to play. But yeah, I don't jump on that. I jump on that argument about it. There's an awful lot of people I see back home when I spend a lot of time there that don't like Gary, and I don't necessarily like their arguments.
Well, I like the term I think you used,
Yeah.
evolved. I think you said
Yeah.
I've evolved.
Yeah.
Sarina says it all the time. Canadians can't get over stuff. You might be one when it comes to
Well, I
stuff
I'm
like
very
this.
proud
You
of
know-
the game, right? Obviously, and
Yeah.
our legacy and our history in it.
But countries aside, what I don't love about since Gary Bettman's been in, it's the little stupid things. It's like now we're 3-on-3 in overtime. Then we get rid of the red line. Then we have a foot in the crease. Then we don't have a foot in the crease. The rules are just constantly changing. And it's like, why?
See, these are better arguments.
Yeah.
I like these arguments.
Don't help her.
I do, though. Like, I was never a fan of overtime. I remember I was playing in Hershey, and we brought in Pete Peters because he was down playing for the Binghamton Whalers in Hershey on a conditioning stint. And we actually started doing overtime and then a shootout. And I'm like, this is so Mickey Mouse for Pete.
Yeah.
Like, so I had those thoughts before, too. I think a lot of it is the modern day fan, they don't like ties. I used to love a hard-working tie, work our tail off. In Philly, we had a lot of tough nights, and to keep up with your Oilers or Calgary, you go to Battle of Alberta, you're pretty happy coming to Edmonton or Calgary with a tie, right, with a draw, right? Those teams were really tough. But I think they changed it because it seems like the modern day fan, maybe, they don't relate to ties. They want to win.
So they changed it, yeah.
Yeah. So what were some of those other things, Sarina?
So first of all, I don't like a 3-on-3 overtime
okay,
and
okay.
a shootout. It's if you're going to play the game 5-on-5 for 60 minutes, why are you changing the overtime? Yes, I understand. They want people to score goals.
Right.
I get that. But it's just the constant changes. And we have a foot in the crease and then we don't. And now the goaltender interference call is like...
There's so much gray area with that.
Yeah. The other night at the Panthers game, it was like there was a goaltender interference and I was like, everyone's like, I'm like, they're only going upstairs to prove it because now they have to prove certain things.
Yeah.
So it's a little things like that are just
So I
strange
think a
to
lot
me.
of those things come down to the competition committee. A lot of it starts with the general managers and they bring things in. And you know what? A lot of that stuff probably starts sort of all of the evolution of where the hockey clubs stand, right? Like if you're Glenn Sather in the 80s, you want 3-on-3 hockey. Like if you don't want those penalties canceling each other out. You want Gretz and Anderson and Coffey out there against the other team's 3 because you don't want it to be 5-on-5 all the time. So he would argue to have there are no coincidental minors. Everybody, it's 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 3-on-3 because that played into that team. I know I was playing in Philadelphia when they brought in the instigator penalty. Well, we had a big tough team, and to me, the instigator rule really changed fighting in hockey because all of a sudden, instead of a guy being concerned about getting a punch in the nose, he was trying to sucker the other team in to goat them into a penalty. So I think teams build their clubs off those rules. And so I think a lot of those issues, it's all brought up sort of regionally or by the different clubs and proposed to Gary, and then they all get together and they vote on it. I don't think it's necessarily a Gary Bettman driven thing, but now you have 32 voices instead of, we had 12 or 21.
But can you
or whatever.
imagine if they did that in the NFL? fans would rage.
they change the
Fans
rules
know
a lot,
football.
They
here.
do change the rules in the NFL a lot, though. But of all the things and the hours we've spent debating this and your hatred of Bettman, that might be a little strong, but you've never brought up the rules. You talk about the goofy all-star events and too many teams, but you've never brought up the rules. There's a lot of other
That's
things
how
that
I
you
feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said about growing the game because it went into my head. I always think about this during the World Juniors. The game I look forward to the most is the Swedes and the Finns. And they're kicking off this turn. It is the best game of the tournament every year because I got no skin in the game. But what blows my mind, you were talking about players coming out of California and Arizona and Florida. Let's talk about Finland for a second. I just looked. There's 5.6 million people in that entire country, and they can ice a team nationally, just like Sweden. It blows my mind.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've thought of that many times. A smaller population. I don't know what Sweden's population is. I went
much more.
Oh, I'm going to look.
Actually followed my dad to Helsinki. Oh, and it was right after 9/11. I think it was May of 2002. Flyers alumni, we went over there and played a tournament. My dad went with a group of Ottawa and played in the 65 and over group. We played in the 35 and over in Helsinki, and what a hockey crazed country. We saw Jokerit play someone in the championship, and it was a blast. But yeah, that's not a lot of people to be putting out the number of players that they put out in our game. And
it's 10.5 in Sweden,
Yeah,
10.5 million. They arguably,
Still not
their
big.
defense is going to be the strongest in the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, it just... I don't think people give those countries enough credit because it's always Canada versus the U.S. or whatever. People don't recognize what really comes out of there.
Hey, there's only 35 million of us north of the border.
Oh, I know. Is there that much?
Size
know.
of Florida.
I think it's
30,
less.
34,
Size
5?
of Florida, size of California, Texas, individually. I have only one last question. What do you have for Chick before we
No,
let him go?
that was great. It was
Well, just that Stanley Cup ring. I would love, folks, that's legit. Not that the others aren't, but the fans got theirs. Some staff got theirs. That's
Very
the real
kind.
deal.
Yeah.
So how did you know? Did they call you, email you?
Geez, so we secretly got an email this summer because they didn't want it getting out, and they want to make sure people keep these as they want people to enjoy. That's one thing I heard from Mr. Viola was, please wear it, enjoy it, show it to people, be proud of it. They don't want people getting these and then, moving them. So a little bit of secrecy that they were doing it, and perhaps that was all part of the great build-up to it, to everybody getting it. We had a terrific night down at the War Memorial on, like you said, December 19th, and they did it so well. The presentation was spectacular, and we opened up the box, and it was lit up, and everything was all. It looked like the bright lights. And the ring just popped, and just really a thrilling time for all of us that happened to be honored enough to be there.
I have no idea why it stuck in my mind, but Peter Worrell was in that seat.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, December 19th, we're getting our rings. I don't know why I remember that date. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you were right. It was December 19th. It was. I flew to Washington the next day and
Showed it off.
wore it through.
Awesome. All right. You said you're done?
Yep, that's
all right.
good. Thanks,
Chick,
Jeff.
Thanks,
hit him
Rod.
straight.
Thanks, buddy.
And
Sarina,
go Caps,
thank you.
eh?
Yeah, go.
Attaboy,
You
Betty.
can say
Just
it. It's
a dad,
okay.
Yeah. We'll see what there will be next year, wherever the heck that ends up being. Great show today. Thanks, Ben. We'll see you next week here on Cats and Bolts.